Hello and welcome back to Wild Owl TV. This is a little short film I've promised to do on the solitary bee habitats and solitary bees. But before I start, I just would like to say thank you so much for all your kind wishes regarding my finger, that I managed to put a screwdriver bit through one side and out the other, and this was all in aid of a barn owl aviary. So after a couple of procedures in Southmead, it's now on the mend and having stitches out in a couple of weeks' time. So it's been a bit of a painful process, but I just would like to say thank you so much. I'm very humbled by how many people have expressed their wishes. So anyway, all self-inflicted. Solitary bee habitats. Let me tell you about solitary bees. Now in the UK, we've got three different types of bee. We've got honeybees. That's the ones that live in beehives, sometimes in natural nests as well. They'll go in tree hollows. And those are the bees that produce honey, and they will protect their honey and the queen and the colony from any intruders, which is why if you hang around beehives and you get too close, the chances are you might get stung, because they're protecting the queen, they're protecting the honey store. Bumblebees, we've got about 26 species of bumblebee in the UK, and bumblebees are they are also social bees like the honeybees, but they nest in smaller colonies, and the queen bumblebee will overwinter, and each spring she starts to make a nest and lay eggs, and grubs will then develop, and those turn into bees, and they work for her. And if that bee nest gets too big, she'll produce a queen bee. So most of the bees she's producing are worker bees and male bees, but she'll produce a new queen. And when you hear about bees swarming, honeybees and bumblebees will swarm. That's really where the capacity of the nest is breached by the amount of offspring in there, and she'll produce a queen, a new queen. The queen will produce a queen, and that queen will go off with some of the colony, and they'll set up again. And when you see a swarm, it's one queen that's left the nest, and all of the others are all around her. Okay, so that's what swarming's all about. That's honeybees and bumblebees. Bumblebees, of course, are generally very nice bees and unlikely to sting you. The only bumblebee that will possibly be aggressive towards you is the tree bumblebee. Those are the ones that will often go into bird nests. So bumblebees and honeybees aside, there's another group of bees, solitary bees. Now in the UK, we have around about 250 species of solitary bees. So they're a very big group of insects, and some of them you'd never really know were bees. And the ones that we will come across quite often, and the ones that I'm going to focus on today, are the leafcutter bee and the red mason bee. Now solitary bees are called solitary bees because the queen is not part of a colony. She is a one-off, she's on her own, and what she'll do is she will lay an egg in a cavity, and then she'll lay another egg in a cavity and another egg, and these eggs are actually put into the cavities in little egg cells. And this is why you can buy products like this with bamboos in or with holes in, and these products are offering these bees cavities. Now the red mason bee will be the bee that is active earlier in the year, so they emerge first. Now this year's red mason bees, see if I've got a red mason bee cell in here. Yeah, there we go. Okay, red mason bee cells, just put that close to the camera, are plugged with mud. In fact, a little bit of mud is just fallen out. Okay, last year a female red mason bee went into this bee habitat, she crawled into the tube, and she deposited what we know as bee bread, which is basically pollen and nectar, into a little ball, and then she lays her egg on top that ball. The egg then develops into a grub, and the grub eventually develops into a new bee, but that new bee won't emerge until the following year. So that one female bee will go backwards and forwards into this tube, and then when this tube is full, she'll go into another tube and another tube, and alongside her will be other females coming and going as well. But none of them are actually connected, they're all working independently. She will lay her female eggs deeper in the tube. the male eggs will be nearer the entrance. Now the reason for that is that when you have a habitat, or even if it was just a hole in a tree or a hole in a rotten log, if a woodpecker or other birds go onto this, which they will, they'll peck out the holes because they know there's food in there. And the chances are, if they do that, they're going to actually eat the male bees first. That's the non-egg laying male bees. But the female bees have been placed further into the tubes, so they're safer. And that's the reason that the bees do that. So more often than not, the female egg cells will be at the back and the male egg cells at the front. Now, assuming that it doesn't get predated on by birds, then another potential problem for these bee cells are predatory wasps and predatory flies, because there are also insects that will go, they know that these bees are laying their eggs in there, and they'll put their they'll lay their eggs deep into the egg cells, and that will then put a parasite grub into the bee cells, which will eat the egg or potentially eat the pupa, and that's another problem for the bees. Now these cells in this habitat are last year's cells, because the female from last year has done all of this work, laid all her eggs, and then later in the year she dies. This now is just a time capsule. So you imagine if you have a wood pile and there's lots of beetle holes in there, and solitary bees have gone into the wood pile and laid all their eggs. In the winter you pick up the wood and you chuck it on the fire, and you wouldn't be aware that actually you're killing lots and lots of bees. So bear that in mind if you use a log burner or something like that. Of course, in these habitats we know what they're being put up for. So these cells this year are red masons. Now at the moment there's actually, you probably won't be able to see it, but there's one here that has a hole in it, and that's where the bee has emerged. Some of them, they've not emerged. Now that could be because the bees inside have died over the winter. Maybe they got a bit cold, maybe a parasitic wasp has actually killed them, I don't know. But many of the bees are emerging. Now it's not a particularly hot day today, which is ideal for filming, but it's not ideal for bees. So I can't at the moment show you any solitary bees, but I'm going to include some video with this little film, just so you can see the bees in action. And I got some fantastic film of these solitary bees. Now when it comes down to putting up these habitats in your garden, you have all sorts of choices. Now I used to work for the manufacturer that makes these two products, Wildlife World, and I used to do product and use videos and photography and public engagement. So I learned quite a little bit about these solitary bees, and the one thing that I have learned, and also with my own use of these bee habitats in the garden, is that there are an awful lot of rubbish ones on the market. Now this particular one here has literally just got simple bamboo canes in. That's all you need. These are roughly, they're varying sizes when you've got natural canes in, but actually what we're looking for is 8mm diameter. So if you've got a solid piece of wood and an 8mm drill bit, and you just drilled lots of 8mm holes, you're going to do the same job as this. So that's a cheap way of doing it. You can make your own habitat 8mm. What I found is that on the market there are these habitats sold as insect habitats, and they look like this at the front, but on the back they're open. So you've got the bamboo is going all the way through. They won't get used. They're a complete waste of money. So don't buy one unless it has a solid back. And if you've got a habitat that doesn't have a solid back, then put a solid back on it, because I've watched these bees for quite a few years now, and they don't like it when they can see out the other end. It needs to be nice and dark. So this is one example of a habitat. This is another example. Now this is a higher priced version. This retails for about £25. It's called an SBH1, Wildlife World Bee Habitat. You can get them online. This I think is probably the best one on the market. It really is superb. Now I used to have a lot of these in the garden. I've given a lot of them away to friends over the years to encourage them to get bee hot colonies in their garden, because that's another thing, of course, is that when they're being filled with bee cells, at the end of the season, when all the bees have died and these cells are just sat in suspended animation almost until the next year, you can actually pick it up and take it somewhere else, and then in the spring those bees will emerge and that will be their new home. So you can do that, and it's quite a useful way. I've been doing that for a number of years, and it's left me actually with less bees than I would otherwise have. So I've stopped doing that now, so you can't have any of these. This SBH one is brilliant, and the reason is it allows you to unscrew the bottom and you can see what the bees have been doing. So if we just remove this and remove another, be a bit careful here. Here you go. That is what you have inside. Now these are leafcutter bee cells. They're like cigars, and the leafcutter bee, as the name suggests, lays this egg cell having cut a leaf, and it brings the leaf back to the hollow, which is this, and it wraps its egg and its bee bread in the leaf. It'll make one cell and block it, and then another cell and block it, and generally in a habitat like this, habitat basically means a bee box, but we're calling it a habitat. In a habitat like this, there could be, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, there's about 6 or 7 cells there. As I say, the likelihood is the males will be at the front, the females at the back. Okay, and the beauty of this product is that you can see what's going on. So for the kids, these are fantastic for kids. These solitary bees, because they're working alone and they're not part of a colony, they actually are very, very safe. The males can't sting, and the females can sting a little bit, but generally they don't. And I've lots of times I've had them on my hand and they're perfectly safe. Let's have a look at another cell. Okay, so in this cell, what we have is we have this cell here. Actually, there is the remains of a bee. Sadly, that bee didn't make it, so he's died, possibly predated on. I don't know if I can get him out. Ooh. Bit crusty now. This is red mason bees again. This is leafcutter bees, sorry. As I say, it's like a green cigar. These are red mason bees, and you can see a slightly different colour, and you can actually see inside the bee bread and the cells inside. Now, I'm not sure what's going on with them at the moment. As I say, there is quite a high losses on these, and I know that some of my bee cells were predated on by a predatory wasp, which I will show you film of. Fascinating. Here's another one, and you can see that these are new bees. These are definitely going to be emerging, but these are last year's, and nothing much is going to happen here. So in theory, I could actually just clear them out to leave space. But the bees, when they want to use this, they'll know whether this is actually any good or not, and they'll just nibble away and get rid of that. So this product is fantastic. It really is fantastic. Now, solitary bees are very, very effective pollinators, and the reason they're very effective pollinators is because they're very messy. They're very small bees. My dad, bless him, I gave him one of these, and I said to him, Dad, put that up in your garden. It needs to face the sun. All these habitats need to be south facing because they have to get warm. So again, if you've got one and you've put it up in the shade, it will never get used. It has to be in full sun. Insects like the full sun. So I gave one to Dad. I said, right, put it on your shed, Dad, and you'll get some solitary bees. The next year, Mum said, right, don't tell your dad I told you this, but he said he had wasps in his bee habitat, and he picked it up and stuck it in a bucket of water. Understandably, I wasn't very happy. Put it in a bucket of water. I said, Dad, they're not wasps. Oh, they're wasps. Dad, they're solitary bees, they're leafcutter bees. He thought they were wasps because they were yellowy colour. Okay, wasps don't go in these habitats. solitary bees go in these habitats. Wasps are social insects. They make their own nest. Fantastic piece of work, but you don't want one in your house. You certainly don't want one anywhere near you. Okay, they won't go in here. So if anything's going in here, it's a solitary bee. It's a harmless solitary bee. It's a nice bee. Okay, I was really annoyed. He won't do it again. I think he learnt the error of his ways. But he's 84 and old-fashioned, really, you know. But he's not using rosekill anymore. So over the years, I have kind of turned him around, I think, because he appreciates now that you know, chemicals in the garden are no good. Particularly if you've got things like this. I cannot understand why people go to a supermarket or online, and they'll put these things in their garden, and then they think, oh lovely, I'm going to get some solitary bees, and they go out and get the chemicals and start spraying the roses and putting slug pellets down and killing all the it's ridiculous. If you like wildlife, do not use chemicals. Another subject. So what other products are there? Well, these are actually let me just get up and I'll show you some of the other ones I've got here. Ooh, there we go. Right then, so this one here is actually brilliant. This was from Morrison's last year, and it was a £5. Fantastic, and it has a solid back. So I've looked in Morrison's this year and I can't see any, but if you see that one in Morrison's, £5, bargain. Buy as many as you can afford, because the more you got, the more bees you get. This is a PBL bee log, PBL being the product code, and the PBL bee log is very good as well. It's made of cedar, and it's an attractive bee log. Does the same job as that one, exactly the same. This is what wildlife will call it insect conservation centre. You don't need anything as elaborate as this. I got this one on for free as I was testing them. But what it does have, excuse me on the finger a minute, is it has a removable bee tube. Now you can actually buy these bees. Sorry, I'm trying to get on the camera here. You can buy these bee tubes, and they're great because, once again, it needs to be dark. So I've put some straw inside the hole here because the bees don't like it if there's too much light. But once they lay their egg cells in there, you can actually see what is inside. So that's brilliant for the kids again. Let's put that back in there. Apologies for the camera work. Trying to multitask here. And then around this one you've also got holes, but really this is the area the solitary bees will use, and then we got another PBL there. So let's pop you back on the tripod a minute. Carry on. Ooh. So basically solitary bees are fantastic. Right now is the time to put them up, okay? And if they get used, if there's solitary bees around your garden, and I'm sure there will be, what you can do, like I do, I literally sit like this, and they're coming and they're going, and I'm watching them. The leaf cutters will be out and active around about July, August time. They're later in the year. The red masons are about now, but I've had times when they've literally been swarming around the habitats here, but this year not so many. It seems to be more leaf cutters, but I think that's again where I've given them all away. But put them up. This is a very simple thing to do in a wildlife garden, and I'll tell you, they're addictive, and once you've got one, you'll want to get more. If you don't want to spend the money, you can go online and buy the 8mm tubes and make your own bee habitat, but the cheapest thing to do really is to get some wood, an 8mm drill bit, and just drill holes in the 8mm drill bit, within the wood with the 8mm drill bit, all over the place. But bear in mind, what you don't want to be doing is drilling holes that way, because if you drill a hole like that, it's going to fill with water when it rains. So the holes need to be slightly tilted so they don't fill with water, because if it gets used, then it could be potentially flooded out, and then the bee cells will die. So I think I've covered everything, and what I'm going to do now is just play you some film that I've done in the previous few years from a garden, and there's some absolutely fascinating footage. These bee films will be the red mason bees and the leaf cutter bees, and you'll be able to sort out which one's which, because the leaf cutters are working on the leaves. And I'm telling you, when you see a leaf cutter surfing in, it looks like he's surfboarding, riding the leaf and going into the habitat. It is fascinating, and I'll be doing some videos live in a few weeks' time once the leaf cutters get active, because like I say, it is addictive, and it's a brilliant time of year to now that all the birds are fledging their young, and that's all going to die down, we can then switch across on Wild Owl TV to insects, which I'm excited about. I'm keeping my eye open, by the way, in the pond for any dragonfly nymphs that are emerging, and I'm hoping to do some time lapse, but it's just a question of whether I see them. And I'm going away for a week in the next couple of days, my stepdaughter is going to be looking after the house. She's not going to be probably bothering with that, so Wild Owl TV is going to take a bit of a break, and I'll put some forward posts on just to keep you entertained, and then we'll get stuck into the garden at the beginning of June, and hopefully, now that I've worked to get it all up together, we can start to look at some new species and keep you informed and hopefully entertained. So thanks again for watching Wild Owl TV. Thanks again for all your lovely wishes over my finger, and I'll see you soon. As you can see, I'm not at all concerned that this bee is on my hand. The reason is because the bee is actually not concerned about me.